began. And instead of me continuing to advance, I became, as I said, disheartened and introverted. And as a result of that, one day I was coming home from Arts High School. I was going to Arts High School. And as the old commercial said, I used to take the long way home to avoid, the rough elements of the community. And one day when I turned that corner, I ran into one of those gangs, and where I prepared myself to fight, one of the guys said, "Hey, I know you." He said, "I know your father." My father was a country boy, but he was a hardworking man, and he had a reputation for going upside your city boy's head for making mockery of country boys. Well, my point is this. The point is this gang adopted me. And that was the beginning of me being accepted or feeling accepted. But it opened a door. It opened a door that made me realize that, or made me think that the guys who break all the rules get all the respect. They probably get the girls. That's the way you thought. And so I said, well, wait a minute, I'm a pretty smart guy. I could probably be a pretty good thug. So if you can't beat them, join them. So it kind of set me off to where I began to feel like, I didn't have it. And if you're going to be a thug or drug dealer or whatever you're going to be, you can't have a conscience. And so I immediately kind of took the attitude that if I'm going to do this, I can't have a conscience. And immediately fear seemed to get me more attention than when I was a kid trying to do all those good things. And this was short-lived because within 9 months of taking on that attitude, I found myself arrested, sentenced to 25 years to life, and I ended up in prison as a juvenile. So that was kind of how it all started. That's kind of where it got started from. Along the way at that time, I met a lot of people in the city. That was coming out of the 60s, the civil rights era, the Black conscious era, all of those things. There was a very strong atmosphere of everything was taken from us. We need to take some of it back. So all of those elements, I found myself in different elements of people like that, but all of them respected me because I had become this fearless young guy who really didn't care about doing whatever it took for him to be accepted. And I don't know if they knew I was trying to be accepted, but they became to respect me as a guy who was serious about getting things done in the criminal world. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And just like that, I went from this kid that my parents didn't even realize what was happening. It was happening so fast.
That's what I was going to ask about. Is your family I believe you said it was your brother that you were connected with and went that way. So was he a part of any of the gangs or any of that, or was he?
No, my brother wasn't so much a part. Was that's interesting because in a way I was kind of following his footsteps. He was kind of wayward. My brother had an even greater need for acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
and him and anybody who dared my brother to do anything, he would do it. And it
Oh.
got him in a lot of trouble very early with my parents and with the law. But I didn't think I was following in those footsteps. But
Mm-hmm.
I think had the same insecurity. And even though I
Ah.
wasn't always with him,
Mm-hmm.
I began to mimic the same thing.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for
Wow.
answering that. Yeah.
So I think one of the first things that I noticed about your journey taking a turn, or your journey probably before then, because you were already into the flow of things with your writing and everything, while we shared time on the days that I was on your unit. Um, was it just the idea that you no longer wanted to be where you were, or was it the idea that I got to do better? A lot of times people don't realize where they are. Did you ever come to that conclusion of where you were, you just did not want to be, where you were?
Well, I can't take credit for it all because actually what happened was once I got into the system, there were a lot of older men in there who knew me as a kid. And when they saw me, it was surprising to them because what you saw in me is what they saw in me as a kid. Like, this kid is a good kid and he's not going to prison. They're not thinking, I had no kind of experience previous to that of mischief or anything like that. So when they kind of saw me in the prison, it was like, hey, this is a good kid. And they kind of knew my family, some of them. And so they took the attitude with me that they were going to become my surrogates. So that was really a blessing. And these individuals were, as I said, coming out of the era of the 60s and 70s. Back then, the prisons were not just places of punishment. They were also like higher institutions of higher learning. I mean, guys were, if you recall, back in those days, they were getting books. They were really getting information up in there, and they were studying things that they never got that chance to look at when they were on the streets. And so these are the guys I kind of got up under, and most of them were older than me, and they began to give me books and material to educate me, to make me see a larger world. And so at one point I was probably reading, a book a week, and I ended up in places like, after Yarville, I ended up in Trenton State Prison. I ended up in Rahway State Prison after that. And these places is where I met, some of the people who really became authors. They became famous. I met Reuben Carter. I met Al Dickens, author Uncle Yaya. I met just a number of people who actually went on to do things. But it was that kind of environment that began to make me rethink the way I was living. In fact, Al Dickens said to me that, you're still going to be a young man when you get out of here. You got a chance to turn this all around. And so, I didn't expect that from prisoners. I didn't expect, especially the guys who were the most respected guys in the system. I really didn't expect that. And then that, to me, they had really created a haven, a safe haven for me and other young prisoners in the prison in that way. So that kind of triggered me back to who I was. Like, you don't have to continue this facade, you can really go and be what you have the potential of being. So they kind of jump started me back into that way of thinking. Now, I didn't really know what I would do with that thinking at first. It wasn't until my 11th year when I, for the first time, went to the hole. And that it was in the hole that I became so angry over the reasons why I was thrown in the hole, that I had this kind of vengeful attitude at first that, they're not going to do this to me. And I think in that moment, clearly in that moment, while I was in the hole, the thought came to me, you don't have anything, you at that point, when you first coming in the hole, you can't make a phone call. I didn't have paper. I didn't have a stamp. I didn't have anything to even write my family, tell them where I was at that point. And in my desperateness, I started thinking about what other guys do. Maybe I ought to flood the cell out. Maybe I ought to set it on fire, to get some attention around here. And what I did was I decided my protest was going to be a hunger strike. So for 4 days, I'm going into 5 days, I didn't eat or drink anything. And the officers, of course, Northern State was different because you had a lot of young officers out of Newark, New Jersey, whose motivation wasn't really punishment. They was just trying to come there to do their job. And they really liked me because they saw me as a good person. And they were pleading with me to eat, and I was telling them, no, put it in the book, because they were saying, we got to put it in the book if you ain't going to eat. And eventually what that led to was a prayer. It led to a prayer. And the thought was, you don't have anything. There's nothing you could do. And then the thought hit me, the only thing you can do is pray. And so I made this angry prayer to God, protesting about how this is not right, how this whole system is not right. And I asked him to help me, help me do something about it, And that was the beginning of it. And while I was making that prayer, all those books that they made me read, all those essays I wrote on those books, it started to come to me while I was making the prayer. The pen is mightier than the sword. Thoughts like that started coming to me. And it started telling me kind of, if you don't like what's going on, then do something about it. You read everything. You know how organizations are structured. You know how societies operate. You know how governments perform. And then these thoughts start coming to me about creating some sort of organization that taught men and women how to get around the you might say the minefield, how to walk through the minefield of things that were there to constantly keep us tied up in the system. And so I took the MA handbook and I started looking at the MA handbook, and I said, we got to learn how to get around all of this stuff here. But at the same time, we have to create some sort of identity and purpose, and we have to rewrite our story somehow, and that was borrowing from what Mr. Dickens had told me years ago, which was, you got a chance to turn this around. So now I was beginning to look at turning it around. And so I just started making these little notes about, the opposite of what I had been doing. And I started saying, well, if my life got me down in this hole, maybe doing the opposite will have the opposite effect. And so I started looking at, what if you become untouchable? What if you stop feeding into everything? What if you got smart here and started thinking more about what you're doing? And so I started writing what I considered a sort of a method to start thinking different and utilizing that new way of thinking. And that new way of thinking really paid off, because in my 60th day, I wrote Mr. Stevens, the superintendent, and I said to him, I said, even though I've been thrown in this hole, I feel unjustly. This officer had no idea that he was the catalyst for me to discover who I am, my purpose. And he wrote me back and said, they say all we do is punish people, but sometimes it has the right effect. And then he said, so I'm reducing your 6 months to 75 days. And that to me was a sign. It was a sign that, oh, by the way, I had signed the letter to Prodigal Son. And I had no idea that he was a deacon. I didn't know that. And then when he cut my time loose, I took that as a sign immediately from God that, hey, see how it works? And so if it can open this door, how many other doors can it open? And so I started writing those prisoners that I knew who had the same mentality. They didn't want to continue to live the life they were living. And from that hole, I wrote them and told them about the program. And as I'm telling them about it, I'm asking them, am I crazy? Am I losing my mind? And they said to me, they said, well, if you crazy, we crazy, because that makes a lot of sense. Amen. So they started sending me a whole lot of other material to add into the program. So I started structuring out the program, and I decided to name it the Prodigal Sons and Daughters because I needed to be understood that we were serious. And that we really had it in our minds to redeem ourselves. And we knew that in order to redeem ourselves, we had to go back to the communities we came from. And we had to take that young man who was headed in the same direction, who was just as insecure as we were. And we had to redirect him to show him that there are guys out here as gangsters as you are. But we learned the lesson. And if you can avoid what we went through, then you have a much greater chance of succeeding than even we do. So that's kind of like how it evolved. And it was the same thing with the parole board. The parole board cut me loose for the same reason, because they were getting so many packages from prisoners saying they were prodigal sons now. And then they called me up and asked me, well, what is the scheme you got going on, Porter? What is all this prodigal son stuff? And I told them it's not a scheme. I have not benefited. It has not benefited me to live the life that I lived. And now I got to change that. In the process, In my eighth year, my mother, who was 45 years old, had terminal cancer and passed away. In my third year, my oldest brother was gunned down. The one I told you who I actually, came up under. He got gunned down in the streets of Newark. So now I felt like all of this was coming full circle, and that I had to do something to change my life. I was of no use to my family on the streets, and all
Mhm.
this I shared with parole, and it was unheard of for someone with a life sentence to go up there first time and get anything short really of a 7 year hit. And and I prayed, I asked God before I went in there, I got to get a 3 year hit. If I get a 3 year hit, I can get out of here the next time. And sure enough, after I defended myself and explained the organization, they called me back in and they said, "We're going to make you a deal. If you come back in here the next time and you continue to do what you're doing, we're going to recommend you for a date." And I said, "You're going to remember me, right?" They said, "Oh, we're going to remember you." And so in about 20 months later, they gave me a 3 year hit. And then 20 months later, I came back in and I asked them, I said, "Y'all remember me, right?" And they said, "We remember you, Mr. Porter." And they took me through the 9 member panel. They gave me the third degree and the whole nine. But when it was
Mhm.
all over, he kind of shook me up because he took me around the way. He said, "You got to understand the risk of letting you go, Mr. Porter, puts all of our reputations on the line."
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, he said, "I'm thinking they're going to give me another hit." But he said to me, he said, "So, it might be better if we protected ourselves and gave you another hit." I said, "I understand." I even told him, I said, "I'm going to get out sooner or later. So I understand." And just like that, he said, "So how do you feel about going home on the first day of summer?" So, it kind of caught me
Wow.
off guard. I said, "Excuse me?" He said,
Mhm.
"How do you feel about going home on the first day of summer?" And that was 34 days away. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay, well, effective immediately, Mr. Porter, you're going home." And I said, "Wow." So, here was another door opening.
Mhm.
So now here God's showing me a second time. Says,
Yeah.
"See, now I'm telling you, all you got to do is what I'm telling you, and you're going to be all right." So now I just have to tell that so that, you get a picture of what drives me now is
Well,
that,
I just want to just emphasize what you're saying. The reason that you are the guest here on the show is because you and I, like I said, you and I have had many conversations, and you and I have had many exchanges where I've said to you, I started at the Boys and Girls Club and only came into corrections because I was trying to keep them out of going into the institutions. And
right,
I wound up, preferring to work with the adults and preferring to work at the male prison as opposed to the female prison in Clinton, only because I felt that working amongst the people is something that just pulled my heartstrings. Working with the people, and I used to tell guys all the time, even when you were in the room, I would tell them all the time, we don't want to push buttons, we want to make
yep,
buttons. we
yep,
want we want to make buttons, we want to do those kind of things. But I have to mention this to you, and it's a part of your journey where I know it was a change. I came in one day and you were writing a poem. You were
mm,
writing what every man should know about a gun.
yep,
And I went home and I told my husband, I said, let me tell you what Mr. Porter is doing. Look, let me tell you what he said today. And we
mm,
shared what you talked about. And just so that the audience understands the impact that you had on me and the reason why I stayed connected to you through all of these years was because you mentioned to me when I said to you that I worked at the Boys Club, and I'll never forget the conversation. You said to me how much you had missed of your childhood.
mm,
You said to
yes,
me how you had missed your prom and how you had
yep,
missed your high school graduation, and how you had missed so many things in your childhood because you were misdirected in a path that you knew you didn't belong in. And
Right.
then that's when you showed me the poem.
Mm-hmm.
It was about maybe about a month later. And I think I came back and told you. I don't remember if I came back to let you know. But it was about a month later, I went to a basketball game in New York and I saw it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
came back, I think, and asked you,
Mm-hmm.
how did you get it on the t-shirt? And that's when you explained to me that your wife was an intricate partner in doing a lot of the things that you were doing. I found it to be so profound, but I'm going to let you expand on it as to why. Why would that be one of the very first things that went out into the communities to express a change is necessary?
Right. Well, being an arts high student, you come up in arts high and you learn about commercial art and illustration,
Graduate, graduate.
and you and you learn that you have a sort of a 3 second window to catch a person's attention.
Mhm,
And so whatever you say to them or whatever they visually see, and this was another thing that Al Dickens told me. He said visuals are quicker at getting people's attention than words. So he said a good visual will get their attention to read what's there. So
mhm,
I thought about, well, what could I got the words in my mind first. What every young man should know about a gun. That came first. But I needed a visual. And being an art student, I decided that it had to be something that you couldn't turn away from. So, of
mhm,
course, I drew this young man with a hoodie on, and he was pointing a gun directly out of the picture at you. And I wanted him to be menacing in a way that if you couldn't look away from them. As soon as you looked at this, it was like, oh, I hope nobody ever points a gun at me like that. But in
right.
that few seconds, you would read what every young man should know about a gun: murder,
Wow.
30 years,
Mm,
armed robbery, 15 years. I
mm,
just went down with the different amount of times for each charge. And then at the bottom, I ended it by saying, now you can't say you don't know.
Mhm,
wow.
So I wanted to, from reading books like The Art of War, Sun Tzu taught that, the first stage of a revolution is the propaganda. That the first
mhm,
thing you got to do out is put out propaganda. So it's psychological. War is psychological. And he taught that the battle is half won if you can win over the enemies and influence him through his thinking. So the
mhm.
first thing I thought about was, when a young man looks at this, most of them, they don't know that there's that much time associated with a handgun. They were like
Exactly.
me. They were like
Exactly.
Yeah.
me. They were so
Hmm.
busy trying to be accepted that
Yeah.
you don't get the consequences in front of you to weigh. So if you
Right.
know kind of what the consequences are, then you kind of say, and I wanted them in barbershops. I wanted them on the street corners. I wanted people to be wearing them around the city. And it was mainly my younger brother behind me who actually took that image, and I asked him to put it on shirts, because as soon as he saw it, he said, man, this ought to be a shirt.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
Wow.
right away, he put it all out. I mean, on posters and everything. So in no time, that drawing just blew up everywhere.
It did. It did. And it was at a basketball game in New York. And I was like, that poem, I know that poem. I know who wrote that poem. And I thought
Mhm.
that,
Right.
especially, we're talking years later. We're now in, like you said, the
Hmm.
propaganda is out there. The ideal of I can just do what I want and I can get away with it is still out there. Young folks don't understand what you give up, when you
Hmm.
are pushed into a system that is already out to get you. The system is already out to say, hey, I'm going to end your dreams. I'm going to end your vision and anything you may be able to accomplish. So I thought,
Right.
how powerful is it that this poem that you wrote then and that you put out then is still so profound now?
Right. Right.
I just
That's
thought,
right.
I just thought that this is something that the kids that are now 16, 17, 18 years old, they may not have seen it as a poster then. They may
Right.
not have seen it as a shirt then. But this
Mm-hmm.
poem is a poem that everybody, the parents that are giving the kids the guns, the
Yeah.
Yeah.
parents that are not understanding that you don't need an assault weapon to be protected. These are the things that they should know, because when they go to these courts and they go to these systems, they automatically want somebody to think that their child is mentally ill or that they have a problem. You have a problem if you're giving them the gun and you know
Yeah.
what every man should know about a gun.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's
You
right.
have you have a problem,
Yeah. That's right.
So that was one of the things that stuck out in my mind when I reached out to you in the beginning and said, "Hey, I want you to be on the show." But talk about how, I understand you got out, and our audience can understand how you got out, and how that evolved and everything. But how did we go from having the awards and being honored and everything else to the expansion? And tell us exactly, what does the Prodigal Sons and Daughters do other than redirect and have the conversations and everything?
Wait,
What
Lynette,
do you
can
do?
I insert a question right before you get
Sure.
there? Just because I want to hear this. But I would like to know, Mr. Porter, from your perspective, what was your first day out of prison? What was that experience like?
Oh,
And
wow. Wow.
how, yeah,
Mm.
how do you process something like that? Because, literally, you are walking with God before you get there. But, a lot of times, I know for myself, being led by God, but being so afraid of stepping into that reality, and knowing now that it is a calling in, as you said, your purpose. So if you could put in words your first day out, and how do you process and take on the purpose for which you have been anointed to do, if you could.
Well, because God had guided me while I was still behind the wall to make amends with the people who were close to me first. That included my
Um,
family. That included
Mhm.
my wife. I met my wife. Well, I met my wife before I went to prison, actually, as a teenager, and visiting her brother is how we ran into each other in Railway State Prison, and ended up married. But, you know, I had a commitment, I had a support system.
mhm.
All of this was guidance. God told me, like the prodigal son, you have to confess. So I had
Mm,
to go with every individual that I knew and seek forgiveness, or
mhm,
seek, let them know that I was sincere about what I was doing. So that created a support system for me.
mhm,
So I was so overjoyed. I was so confident, because everything that God was leading me to was happening.
mhm,
So it was a little different for me when I kind of walked out the door. I don't know, Miss Buchanan, if you know this, you may. I don't know if you know that it was a collection taken up for me by the
Mhm.
officers and some staff members who put me in a limo in the front of Northern State Prison and
Mhm.
put $1,200 inside of the car for me. I don't
That's the
know
kind
if
of
you
family. Yeah, that's the kind of family
Look
we
at
were.
God. Look at God,
Yes.
though.
Yes.
you
Yes.
see. So
Yes.
so
Wow.
I didn't so I didn't come out. I didn't come out like other people came out. I came out knowing that you and God done made a deal.
Sure.
And so, I mean, I was surprised at times, but he gave me a wife, so I didn't have to come out there and
There you go.
go through that whole thing.
Yeah.
And she had already been in there with me for 7 years, doing time
Wow.
with me, and never missed a
Mm,
visit. So
boy.
I had every reason, and I just want to say this before I get complete that. One day, after they gave me my date, I was in G trailer, and I was walking out of my wing of G
Mm-hmm.
trailer, and three female officers came up to me. They all came all the way down there to see me, and they stood at the
Mm-hmm.
door when I was coming out, and one of them poked me. She said, "Wait a minute, now I'm paranoid now because I'm going home." I said, "Hey,
Yes.
don't play. What's up?" They said, "No, we got a question for you." I said, "Okay, what's the question?" They said, "What's up with Miss Porter?" You know, I said, "What do you mean? What's up with Miss Porter?" They said, "Yeah, what you gonna do for Miss Porter when you get out here?" I said,
Mhm.
"Stop playing." So I try to walk past them. They don't let me pass. They said, "No, what's happening with Miss
Yeah.
Porter when you get out of here?" Because you know how these guys do. They had these
Mhm.
women come down here all these years, and when they get out, they don't
Right.
even go
Mm-hmm.
see the woman. So I
Right.
Mm-hmm.
explained to them, and it convinced them. I said, "Listen, I believe in karma, and I believe that if I do wrong to Miss Porter, it's going to have a domino effect. And I think everything is going to go wrong if I don't do her right." So
Mm-hmm.
that for them was like, oh, okay. So that was that. But to answer the question about coming out, I came out, and to me, I didn't really felt like I missed a step. I
Mm.
kind of, I kind of, I was ready. So
Yeah.
this is one of the reasons why we think prodigal sons and daughters should start behind the wall, because those men and women need to make commitments before they get out to the
Mm-hmm.
people who they're going to need before they get out there. And by the way, this commitment is in writing. It's a contract that actually exists that you have to sign with every person that you're asking to be part of your support system. So
Mm-hmm.
before you get out, the organization has already sat down with your family members and dissected all the particular challenges you're going to have, so that when you walk out that door, they've all agreed, okay, I'll work with prodigals on getting him a job. Okay, I'll work with prodigals on getting him a place to live. He don't need to go back to the old neighborhood. And I'll work with him on his medical. I'll work with him on school. I'll work with him on this or whatever. And so once again, the village is raising the child again. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the idea. We didn't want to support. Pardon me. We didn't want to depend on politics. We didn't want to depend on grants. We didn't want to depend on anything but reinvesting in that person stepping back into their actual position God gave them. If as a man, the head of his home, if he's to be the head of his home, then he has to act like someone that everybody in the home wants to respect, trust that he is responsible, and that he works to provide for his family. So all of that is within the curriculum of Prodigal Sons and Daughters, which is a 90-day life skills mentorship training program. So all of that is incorporated in that. My wife and Wahida Clark, the best-selling author, are the ones who really head up the Prodigal Daughters. So they really took that. Wahida Clark did 10 and a half years, and Behind the Wall became a best-selling author. So between them, they began to build what the Prodigal Daughters were. And it started with Wahida Clark and other women who had been to prison. And so that end was built through them.
Mm-hmm. And I want to just tell you that Miss Clark, I also have done things with her and been at events with her, book events with her. And yes, you're going to get an email, Miss Clark, because that means you got to come on too. But
Mhm.
the thing about it is, she also has been an intricate person for me. I've been able to talk to her about books and talk to her about different things as well. And I'm so happy that she's a part of the Prodigal Sons and Daughters, because this program, unlike many programs that have gone through system and failed, because it's been so political. It's been
Right.
so many politics that play into, well, you got to do this element in order to get your funding. You got to
Right.
do this in order to get your building. You got to do
Yeah.
this in order to have, you got to have so many members of this age or so many members of this ethnicity or this, culture. So I'm so I can't even tell you, Mr. Porter, Dennis, my friend, my my buddy that I used to run to the trailer and go, I need somebody with a level head to talk to for a minute. I can't even
Yeah.
tell you how proud I am that I see something that if I had stayed in New Jersey, I definitely would have been a part of as well.
Mm.
Something that needs to spread nationwide. And speaking to that, tell us about the expansion, because in your repertoire of accomplishments, we understand that you have expanded it all the way to Ghana.
Yes. Yes.
So tell us.
Well, once again, the prodigal daughters. Speaking of Miss Wahida Clark and my wife and a number of other prodigal daughters I could name. And I don't want any of them to think I left them out, because there are some superstars among them that I probably won't get to mention right now. But we actually had a graduate that went to Georgia to live, and he happened to be in a program while he was down there, like a housing program. And he told them, he said, this program needs prodigal sons and daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know what he was talking about. And so he got us on the phone with the director down there, and we started explaining to him how our program works. And he said, y'all got to come down here. So we all got together and we went down and we looked and we saw a system that was, just housing people, just throwing them into places. These places were filthy. They weren't getting the treatment they needed, mental health, substance abuse treatment, all. They were just making money. They were like cattle up in the place. And it was shocking. And the question was, how are y'all getting away with this? But we realized that this is happening all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided, that we were coming down there, and Miss Wahida Clark spearheaded that and went down there. Actually, they relocated. A number of the prodigals relocated to Georgia. And they've since about 2015 been down there, and then they expanded it to Florida. And then from Florida, actually to Winter Haven, Florida, where actually Mr. Al Dickens is from. So they expanded it to Florida. In 2019, we were all invited to Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson invited us to the Rainbow Coalition conference that he had through some people we were dealing with at the time. And he heard us speak on the reentry system we had, and he kind of immediately picked up that these people are right on point here. But it was the delegation from Ghana, who, this was 2019, so you're talking about the 400-year anniversary, and they heard us speak on our reentry program and our mental health system. And we ended up out in the hallway with them. And they were saying, you have to come to Ghana. And they were saying it like, no, you don't understand. We need y'all in Ghana. And so a delegation of about 16 with a camera crew actually went to Ghana. And the reception that they got was a very, very, I would say, almost diplomatic reception. And they ended up staying down there longer, or staying over there longer than originally scheduled. But it led to the officials of Ghana wanting us to set up 42 mental health clinics and set up prison industries. They had no industry. All of their agriculture was rotting on the ground in the off season because they didn't have canning operations. And we suggested to them that you set up uh, what do you call them, shipping containers, and
Mm-hmm.
set them up outside of the prison like a manufacturing plant, like an assembly line. And they loved that idea. So, but COVID came and it kind of slowed things down. So we are working on that cocoa and other products, starting to can and ship those kind of things to start export through the prison system and the life skills program, because a lot of them are coming out of those savage conditions and they're in the same mental condition as when they left. So we wanted them to be able to make money while they're in prison, you know, create an incentive so that they could go back to their townships and villages and so forth and be a contributing member the same way we had. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like the blueprint we want to use all over the world. Now, all this we've done without a regular support system of finances coming from government or any other rich source. All of this was born in a prison cell in
Mm-hmm.
northern state. So
Yes,
um,
yes.
so right now, you know, we constantly tell people, yes, we need money, but stop thinking money is the most important part. Money, the money part is just the fuel. It's the ship we had to build for 35 years that was
Mm-hmm.
difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And people, and you know, when you ask people about money, they want to start, you know, backing up, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that with all the problems we talk about in our community, how our young men are not doing what they're supposed to do, how our young women are losing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get leaders who can reach them, you want to support them.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
won't back them up, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
we had to take a self-help approach. You know, we had to
Mm-hmm.
take an attitude of building it first and then proving that it can be done. And, you know, in that way, hopefully to wake up our community or anyone who has the means to help us with a hand up, not a handout. We're looking for a hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, and
that's
and
powerful.
I think that that's the most powerful thing, that
Mm-hmm.
you know, you take it and you add to it, and you get genuine people that way.
That's
You
right.
don't get people that are interested in the financial benefits
Yeah.
or the financial input that's necessary. You get people that are genuinely concerned. And that was one of the things I took as a forefront for me as an officer, because I came in knowing what it was like to be attacked in a boys and girls club by
Wow.
kids. You know,
Wow.
I used to tell people all the time that I was more scared of the kids at the boys and girls club than I was at the inmates in the prison,
Mm.
because the kids, you couldn't do
Right.
anything with them.
Mm.
You can't do anything with them. You can't go out there and tell them, hey, you're going to lock up. You can't, you know, there were no rules that would stop them from doing a little of every. And we had a daycare in the building, and they didn't care that we had babies in the building. If they wanted to come in and we told them they couldn't bring in their guns or their drugs, they would automatically attack.
Mm.
So, you know, I understand totally how to turn dreams around,
Yeah.
you know, and you and I used to have those conversations all the time, that the
Right.
dream, the nightmare that they're in has to become, you know, a dream, you
Right.
know, so that they can move on from it. Um,
Right.
I clap my hands to you, because of the simple
Yes.
fact that that's something that's needed to be commended, needed to be commended. And I just find that writing books and doing what Miss Clark does, as well as what I do, is informative when someone reads the books.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, if they read the book, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of them read the book because it's entertaining. They're not reading the
Mm.
book looking at the background of the stories that are being written. They're not looking at the
Right.
struggle that the characters may be in, or how they get out of the struggle, or how they get caught up in the struggle. They're looking at the
Right.
entertainment. You know, they look at it on the
Right.
screen and they think, oh, being the gangster is the best thing going, but they don't realize how much the gangster loses. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Well, you know,
so
that's what I like about Miss Clark's books, because Miss Clark,
exactly,
just
exactly.
like I did with the gun thing, she glamorizes that world enough to attract them, to pull them in.
Mm-hmm.
And then she utilizes the story to show them the consequences on the end.
Mm-hmm.
And of course she's a writer for that generation because she gets gritty with it in a way that really draws them. I mean, she's the number one urban literature artist, so
Mm-hmm.
and it's because her husband told her when she was in prison to start writing, and
Exactly.
she had seen some things in her life that that's another thing. One of the things in Prodigals we came to understand was that a lot of times everybody has something valuable. There's a question we always ask in prodigal meetings: is there any experience that does not have value? And everybody always answers that and says, no, there is no experience that does not have value. So why are you allowing somebody else to package your story? Why
Mm-hmm.
aren't
Yeah.
you why
Mm-hmm.
aren't you the one repackaging you?
Mhm.
And so that's what Miss Clark does. She repackages a lot of authors who are who are in prison.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And,
this is the
it's a collective thing that we have to do. It's a collective
that's
thing that
right.
we all have to put in and give a part of. As I said in my opening, that we're not just about the literary component, we're about the
Mhm.
community component. That
Yeah.
a part of
Right.
the community has to understand that if you don't have an entrepreneur in your community, you got a problem.
Yeah.
If you
Yep.
don't have somebody seeking to build their own, you got a problem.
Mhm.
If you're
Right.
not seeing someone that wants to educate another, you got a problem,
Right.
and you have encompassed all of that in your program. And like I said, that was one of the reasons why I'll just tell you something funny. My partner in crime, she, we have to share all of the information. So
Hmm.
when I got all your information, what I knew and what I didn't know, and then I got the format, I got the formal stuff. And I said to myself, well, there's no need for me to wait till 2 days before the show to send this information to her, because I
Right.
know when she sees this information, she's going to be blown away.
Yes.
Mhm.
So when I sent the information to her, as you sent it to me, I just forwarded it to her.
Right.
About maybe a couple of hours later, it sank in. And I could tell that it sank in because the first thing she didn't even say hello to me. She just said, wow. I was like,
I'm like, I
okay.
don't.
I said, okay. I said, and she said, so you know him? I said, yes, I know him. I've known him for years. Yes. And she said, wow. She just kept saying, wow, because we
Mm.
don't have many people that connect to other people the way you and I have connected.
Right.
It's almost like you go to the doctor when you're sick, but you don't want to see him any other time.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so who in the right mind would want to relink with someone who came up in the system with them, became a sergeant in the system,
Right.
and now we relink as me promoting you?
Yeah. That's something else. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah. That's something else.
I have to, because in
Mhm.
my heart of hearts, that is what the system is supposed to do. It's the
Mhm.
Department of Corrections.
Mhm.
Right.
If we
Right.
Yeah.
don't correct, what are we
Yep.
doing? What are we doing if we don't have a Wahida Clark that can do for other people inside the prison, or a Dennis Porter who says, I'm going to do for not only the people that are in the system, but the people that are out of the system, and make sure they don't go back in the system?
Yeah.
Yes,
What,
ma'am.
what are we doing if we're not correcting?
Yeah.
That's right. And I got to give a shout out to the Northern State prison officers of that time, because they were a different breed.
Yeah.
I don't even think we could have had that kind of success in the structuring of the organization without their help. They saw what was happening.
Mhm.
They made concessions to help it to happen.
Mhm.
Just to mention a couple of real quick things. When I was drawing that drawing sitting there in G trailer, the officers immediately said, "What are you going to do with that?" And I told them, I said, "Well, my brother's talking about putting it on shirts." It was Northern State prison officers who started buying them in bulk and selling them. That's how
Wow.
much they believed in what they were looking at.
Yeah.
And
And
my
not only
brother was,
that, just to cut
mhm,
you off shortly so that the audience will understand, you weren't supposed to be allowed to make that drawing.
that's right.
I
That's
wondered
right.
about that.
Yeah,
That's right.
that was not something that you were supposed to be doing at
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
because of the element of it being a gun,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
because the element of it promoting violence.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is we knew you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We
And
Yeah.
knew
and
you.
and Lieutenant Simpson,
Hmm.
when they wore the shirt in, my family all came in on a visit, and they all had the shirts on, and they stopped them and wouldn't let them in.
Mm-hmm.
And they called Lieutenant Simpson, and Lieutenant Simpson told them to come in, let me see the shirt. He
Mm-hmm.
looked at the shirt. He said, "What's wrong with the shirt?" He said,
Hmm.
"This is a great shirt. This is they should be wearing a shirt like this." Then he said, "Let them all in." And
Oh
and
wow.
they all came in, but the officers themselves, they already knew about that shirt.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
the My brother actually had it at the Black Expo that year. He actually took it back to the Black Expo.
Mm-hmm.
He said Jada Pinkett Smith at that time, she hadn't married Will yet. She came over in his booth because she was selling shirts too, and he went over and took her one as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Jada ended up in his booth helping him sell our shirts.
What?
Um,
Wow.
Samuel Jackson bought it. Shaq
Mm-hmm.
bought it. Michael Moore, who was the heavyweight champ at the time, bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy Williams bought it and got on the radio. My brother, when I spoke to him, he said, Wendy Williams is going to come on the air and she's going to talk about your shirt. I said, what? He said,
Mm-hmm.
stay close to the radio. So when Wendy came
Mm-hmm.
on, Wendy said, this is a shout out to a brother in the prison. She said, listen to this. She had a hip hop record on, and then she kept lowering the record, saying what every young man should know about a gun. And she just
Wow.
went through it, murder, 30 years. And then she said, you know who you are. She never said my name. But the
Mm-hmm.
guys on the wing was like, oh, snap, because they were sitting there when we drew this.
Hmm.
So
Uh-huh.
they were like, "What?" So
Yeah.
that started recruiting guys into the organization right there in the prison, and it got so large at one point that the guys from the other trailers one
Would
day
come
came
over.
over into G Trailer's yard, and when I walked out, I said, "What's going on?" Because it looked like a fight or something was going to happen. And one of the guys next to me said, I think it was Maddox. He said to me, he said, they come in to hear about Prodigal. I said, oh no, they can't do it like this. So I said, listen, tell everybody to go back to their wing. So I contacted Mr. Stevens and I
Mhm.
told him what was happening. And he approved Prodigals to be a program instituted in Northern State Prison the following year.
Mm.
But if you remember, the following year he was gone.
Yes.
They
Oh.
they shipped him out, and they
Mm.
had with the Barbo, I think his name
Yes.
was.
Marco came
Yeah,
in.
yeah, he came in, and it
Mhm.
never did get out. And that's when we all said we got to get out so that we can take this out first and
Mhm.
bring it back in.
Mhm.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
so that I just wanted to mention that, and if you don't mind, before it's over, I want to mention some of the programs that are in
No,
Prodigal Sons and Daughters.
it's not over, my dear.
Yeah,
Like I
we're gonna
said,
go as long
I
as we
want the
need.
audience to get what is
Mm-hmm.
necessary because, as I said to you, um, I don't know what you call it, kindred spirits. That's
Mm.
the best definition that I can give you because I don't attach to many people.
Mm.
And I don't overwhelm people. I don't bother a lot of people. I only bugged you when I said, "Hey, I got a nudge. Do you want to do this?" If you had told me, "No, I'm too busy" or whatever, I would have just simply said, "Okay, he's too busy." You know,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have I'm not that type of person. So my thing is that when you have someone such as yourself, when you have someone that has something to offer the community, and uh, it attaches to my kindred spirit, it attaches to Felice's kindred spirit. I got storage time on this thing. I don't know how long they'll play the tape or whatever, but I'm here for you, and you do have people that are in the background listening.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to hear, what are those programs and what do you do and how do you get it done? And let that kindred spirit spread.
Yes.
Right. Well, one of the things I want to mention, just to the keep this as real as possible. I think you saw in the PowerPoint presentation we made mention of some management issues that occurred within our
Mhm.
organization
Yeah.
that played a role in almost crippling the organization financially. Now,
Mm.
the reason why I don't care to get into detail about that,
Mm-hmm.
but because those people don't realize who they're really messing with. They think they're
Right,
messing
that
with
part.
us.
Mhm.
You know, they think they're
Mhm.
messing with us. So,
Mm-mm.
but here's what I wanted to say about it. For one thing, from about 1995 on up when I came out, we had a lot of uh, acknowledgement awards and different
Mhm.
stuff that just went on for years.
Mhm.
Most may not know that I made history as the first director of prison and reentry for the city of Newark. And that happened 11 years after I got out, when Senator Cory Booker, who was the mayor then, heard me speaking at Rutgers Law, and he was speaking that same day, and I spoke before him. And after he heard me speak, I didn't even know him by face; I just knew his name. And he
Mm-hmm.
came over. He said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Dennis Porter." And I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm Cory Booker." I said, "Oh, you're Cory Booker." So he said, "I got to have you on my team." So I ended up on the transition team for the book administration, and I became the director of prison and reentry for the city of Newark. I say that to show how all walls once again break down when
Yes.
when
Mm-hmm.
you when you're coming righteously and doing it the right way. So
Yes.
the programs within prodigals are first aimed at the moral strengthening of a person. That integrity is what's missing a lot in our community. We're so dismantled that we had to incorporate a system like a merit to merit system that rewarded good behavior, and
Mm-hmm.
actually, you self punish when you did bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mhm.
created a six skill set program, a life skills program that deals with character building, communications, conflict resolution, family reorientation, financial literacy, and networking. And so
Mhm.
within that 12 weeks program, you actually have facilitators who are former offenders, who are
Mhm.
in front of you telling you about the walk that they took with prodigals. And these are people who eventually become members of the fraternity and sorority of prodigal sons and daughters. So it's not like this is a program that lasts for a couple of months and then, because the funding runs out, then it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
bye.
Right.
We
Mm-hmm.
needed to reestablish the connection of families and all of those things. So the life skills program is the foundation of the philosophy of prodigal sons and daughters and what they believe in and what they live by. So
Mm-hmm.
now I mention that because the struggle still remains that our programs we have are phenomenal programs, but they're very ahead of time. A lot of times they're moving
Mhm.
faster than the people because we don't have that money coming in from all of those sources to
Mhm.
respect what we're doing and allow us to do what we know how to do. This
Mm-hmm.
money comes out of the pockets of the members. That's how we've
Mhm.
sustained ourselves for the most part. So we have things like that life skills program that is the glue that holds our organization together. In spite of that, everywhere prodigal sons and daughters goes, we set up three things. First thing we set up is food.
Mhm.
The first thing we set up is food pantries and things like that to start feeding the communities. When we were first getting ready to go to Avon Avenue, if you're familiar with Newark, you know that's one of the worst areas in the
Mhm.
city of Newark. And when we were kind of trying to figure out where we were going to go, Avon Avenue looked like one of the locations or the first location we would end up in. And we had the people who were coming to the program said, "Nah, Mr. Porter, don't go to Avon. Whatever y'all do, don't go over to Avon." So we said, "Oh, that's exactly where we going then." So we went up in Avon Avenue, and the first thing we did was begin to back trucks up into that community, lay out tables, and lay them out with food. And we ain't talking about no expired food, rotten food, all that kind of stuff. We're talking about this country has plenty of food, and if you're a nonprofit organization, they'll write it off and give it to you. So we were bringing food into these communities. The next thing we set up was a thrift store. And because of our friends who saw the good we were doing, and once again, I got to say, a lot of them were former Northern State prison people. They were bringing us stuff with tags on it. I mean, like, here, take this, take this, take this,
Wow.
you know. And they were bringing us stuff, and it was incredible. A lady came in there one day, and she said, "This is not a thrift store. This is a boutique." And I said, "Wow." So we were giving the community stuff, and we were taking the money and actually putting it back into the community. So every time they were paying $2 for, you know, something that probably cost $50. The children, we started taking the children. We set up a breakfast program for them, for the children to come there to eat in the morning. And along with that, we set up a young entrepreneurs program for the children to actually assist in the store, set everything up. They would make money, and we were on our way to actually creating vending carts and all the rest of it, so that we could take our kids and show them step by step how to take back their community. So that's another program. We had the behavioral health care. We have a new behavioral health care program. You might have seen me post that beautiful blue and white building in Elizabeth. Every time our enemies try to destroy us, God sends somebody who has nothing to do with it. I mean, totally out of left field. A Latino gentleman in Elizabeth learned through a friend of ours about our organization. And he was driven, he said, more by goodwill. He likes doing good things. And he heard about what we were going through. We went and met with him. He owned that beautiful building. He had the building fixed up. He had it repainted for us. And so we started a new mental health program called Walk in Wellness. And so that should be jumping off around October, hopefully, that we'll be ready and up and going. You know, the struggle still remains that we have to wait until God gives us what we need to keep going step by step, so we move at his pace. But hopefully by October, we'll be able to go up in there and make that work. We've already got a lot of buzz from the people of Elizabeth, because ain't many of the dark Black people over there really doing much. And they were very happy to learn we were such a established organization that we are starting to connect with people over there. So that's another aspect of what we do. We have a writing program that Miss Clark is working on to create a young authors program to get the young writers out of the community now to start surfacing. And she'll be putting that into effect as soon as she can get that going. Down south, she's got so many things going on down there that she's working on in terms of programs that I would say it's best to look at it like this here. We saw ourselves as a society within society. When we came out of the prisons, we know that the discrimination still existed. We knew that in spite of them saying that you paid your debt to society, realistically, a Black person doesn't know what that means. We thought we paid our debt to society anyway. But the way we look at it is we need everything a society needs, and we appreciate any help that we might get from government. but we can't sit back and wait for somebody else to change our condition.
Yeah.
So we want to change our own condition, and we want to be in control of changing our condition. And
Absolutely.
so in the process, we fed our people on our own. We clothed them on our own, and housing. A couple of years ago, we had about 7 or 8 houses up here that we opened for prisoners who couldn't get out of jail because they didn't have an address to come home to.
Mm.
So we invested in housing so that they would have an address to come home to.
Mm.
Uh, Miss Clark and them went down south and established that for the homeless as well, and started doing the same thing in those places. So all of this is taking place through the ingenuity and faith of the individuals within the organization, who will not be denied as long as God is on their side.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Oh, that's
Exactly.
phenomenal. I love it. I love it. So,
Now we're starting a program called Celebrities at Risk, Miss Clark being a celebrity herself. We looked at the number of prisoners that we met who got incarcerated. Some of them were famous before they came to prison, some became famous within prison. And we looked at how it's different for them, how when they do something, the whole world, they're on trial with the whole world. And
yeah.
sometimes they can't bounce back from that. And it's a heavy psychological burden on them. They turn to drugs, they get depressed, they
Mm-hmm.
they they lose their money, they got robbed by contracts. So we started looking at the industry in general and started saying, well, celebrities are at risk just like we're at risk.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we started looking at private recovery facilities for them,
Mm-hmm.
for treatment, and we feel like, and as a nonprofit, we wouldn't be in it to just make money off of them and take advantage of them at that point. We know that a lot of the kids that come out of our community that become famous, they need a Fame 101 academy or something, that
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
or some conferences where they come to, and their families, and sit there and learn about the tricks in a contract, the tricks that management pulls, how you blow your money, all of these things, how you end up betraying good people who you should have kept. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these things is what we are putting in place, and it's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of time before these things continue to flourish, because they have caught the attention of a lot of celebrities already. I used to get invited to shows in Atlantic City all the time, that in the middle of the show, they called me up on stage and they'd ask me to get on the mic and explain Celebrities at Risk. And I'm talking about old school, Shy Lights, Blue Magic, all the groups. And I would have a chance to come up there and explain Celebrities at Risk. So we know that in God's time, He's going to open all of these doors. But we want to make sure that we're ready, that we're right, that we don't get corrupted by, as you can see now in the industry, there's a lot of subliminal Satan worship going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make sure that we are thoroughly prepared to take on the challenge of, you might say, exercising these demons out of our community. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot, it's quite a bit, but these are just some of the things that we are working on. And I know I've forgotten a number of them, because we encourage creative thinking, creative intelligence in our organization. A lot of people come out of the prison system, and when they come out of the prison system, they are held still to a thought process of dependency,
Mm-hmm.
where they're not being encouraged to start a business. They're not being
Yeah.
encouraged to become a writer. They're not being encouraged to become a community leader. They're being told that you go over to this office and ask them if they'll help you out, and take a number and sit down.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to change all of that. We did a conference years ago called 100 Successful Ex-Offenders. So anything that we can do that would remove the stigma that
Mm-hmm.
we are supposed to forever sit back and accept third-class citizens, not just as
Right.
ex-offenders, but as Black people. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want want third class citizenship. We've
Yes.
had that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to help ourselves, and that's where we are now.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Beautiful,
yes,
beautiful.
yes. That is incredible. So, so what do you feel your relationship with, I guess, more or less the prison systems now, because you said there's been a shift in the way, maybe the correction officers mindset is, and those kind of things, because, you know, trust, I don't know very much about the prison systems. Um, but you hear about the stories about now, uh, privatized prisons and those kind of things. So there is a big, it would seem to me, um, just a challenge more so to, you know keep our community out of prison as much as we possibly can, but there's so much of an effort to put them in.
Right.
So what how do you feel your organization, um partners with the prison system in that?
Well. A couple of things. First of all, we know coming out of slavery, the 13th Amendment contained little hidden tidbits
Yes. Yep.
that would allow them to focus more on human trafficking than
Yes.
on reform. You know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and again, I think the best opportunity we have to change things is for us to take up our own responsibility to change these things. I don't think we're ever going to completely reform the thinking that exists because of the way that people view
Mm-hmm.
prisoners. I don't think you're ever going to change everybody's view of that. I think we could probably argue and have a good argument as to how this all started and the reason why it is the way it is. So now, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of uniting, I think in every set there are people who are for you, like
Mm-hmm.
this lady with you right now, this great lady with you. I think there
Yes.
are always people with you, and there's always
Mm-hmm.
going to be people against you. That's why we set up a system in Prodigals to screen out those who are not ready,
Yeah.
because we need the best representation we can get. And we have to
Absolutely.
defy what they're saying and make them prove that we're not worth investing in correction.
Sure.
So we have to show them what correction looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you this. In different states, I'm telling you, we are getting contacts from different states and people who are in the official capacity. And let me give you a perfect example. The warden of Rahway State Prison during Rahway's Great Rise, where Rahway State Prison actually became the beacon model of
Mm-hmm.
prison reform, was a
Mm-hmm.
man named Bob Hatrack, who ran Rahway State Prison, took it over, and in a 10-year period made Rahway State Prison the most recognized prison in the world. He
Mm-hmm.
actually started a prison boxing program with one of our members who was James Scott, who has now passed away. But James
Mm-hmm.
Scott actually became the number one contender in the world in the light heavyweight division from Rahway State Prison because
Mm-hmm.
Warden Hatrack got him on NBC, got a contract with NBC. There's a group called the Escorts that came out of Rahway State Prison under Mr. Hatrack.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of famous people that came out there. The Scared Straight program was born under Mr. Hatrack.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hatrack is now a partner with Prodigal Sons and Daughters in taking his system and our system and combining it into one system, proving that from the top to the bottom, there is a success story. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're going to promote that success story to the world to show that you can reform these systems from top
Mm-hmm.
to bottom. And we have the models with
Mm-hmm.
us of
Mm-hmm.
those undeniable facts
Yeah.
that these two organizations have proven there is a better way of doing these things. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad you asked that because it gave me a chance to mention Mr. Hatrack, who's
Yeah.
now in his 80s, him and his great wife, Joan. They are helping us to really get this on the map. He just wrote a book called Not on My Watch. And you should try to get that book, because that book is really shining light on how you can run prisons and make them work, and how you can reform inmates at the same time. And now we are like the I don't want to say bastard child, but he didn't even know that his influence had influenced prodigal sons and daughters to be created. And so he was so happy to learn that. He's now getting all this attention from, big name publishing companies and the rest. And he wants the story to be told that this is my child here. This prodigal sons and daughters.
I love
That's
that.
that's my baby right there.
I love it. And
So
this is funny because go
you
ahead.
might
I'm
want
sorry,
to get him on your show too.
Okay. Well, it was very interesting because as you were talking about, I forget exactly what it was, but chills were going up and down my arms and everything. And then the thought came to me. I was like, of course I've seen the shows, the Scared Straight programs, and trust me, from somebody sitting in my living room watching this, I was scared straight. But I feel that that's it was one dimensional, right? Because it just caught, the youth, and took them into this environment to open their eyes, much like your T-shirt with a gun in the things that every young man needs to know about a gun, gives them a reality of that. But then it doesn't hold their hand to keep them on that path of, and encouragement to, don't stray over here, stay on this path, this straight path. And it seems like the perfect marriage from Mr. Hatrack and then your program, Prodigals, Sons and Daughters, to partner up and marry. And as you were talking, I'm just getting chills all down me because, again, it feels, when Nanette was telling me about, or she sent me, your information, and my wow was so much ingrained in seeing what a manifested purpose is. And that was my wow, that you're the very definition of purpose, what you're supposed to do with your life. And having the experiences that you absolutely had to have in order to be purposed for this life. And again, I am just like humbled and still wowed. Wow.
Well, it's like Miss Buchanan just said earlier. She said it takes all of us. It really, each of us is giving a component, an important piece of this. It's very important that we stop the dismantling of our community. Our women are being turned against our men are being turned against our women, our children are being turned against the adults, and it's all outside influences. And so in order to probably cure this cancer, we have to have some kind of internal work, an army or whatever internally that goes to work to undermine that and to really root that cancer out. And it has to go back to the males in the community, which, whether they're drug dealers or businessmen and women or spiritual leaders, the influence of men will practically stop a thing from growing, or it will cause a thing to grow without somebody being able to stop it. But until you get your men in order, till we get these men in order, and that is not going to come by us asking somebody else to please give us a chance to be human beings. It's not going to happen like that. We have to recognize that in this world, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you command.
And not only that, the thing about it is, we, like you said, we all play a part. And a lot of us jump ship before we know we can row the boat.
Right.
We leave the whole operation to somebody else. We throw in the oar and say we can't row anymore because we tired. You know, we can't see the shore, so we don't know, we lost, you know, just because we can't see the shore, you know. The sun doesn't come up at the same time every day, so our watch is wrong. You know, we use every kind of excuse we can to say that it's not working, to say that, you know, today it's not a good day, it's not a this day, it's not a that day. And until we face some of our own personal challenges.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what the program to me says. One of my lines that I used with my very first book that I wrote, and the book that I just wrote, you know, you're coming in on my rebel part of me has always wanted to identify some of the things that we do that people think they don't see. You know, it's like stealing the cookie from the cookie jar and you got the chocolate all around your mouth and you're telling somebody that you didn't eat any cookies. So my thing is always to reveal and then heal.
Right.
And inspire.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
that's exactly the route that you took. You began to reveal who you were and what the real you was. And then as you and I have had conversations in the past, there was a healing that had to go on. You had to heal from that. You can't move on unless you heal. I can't touch you and I'm still sick.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
I can't even talk to you if I still have a sick mind. You know, I can't open up to you if I don't know how to open up because I'm scared to reveal who I am.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, you know, from revealing it to healing it, you have to inspire. You can't hold on to something that's this good and not give it to somebody else.
That's right. That's
you know,
right.
if you're right in everything that you do, that's what you have to do. So that's been the premise of my books. When I write my books, be it romance, be it, you know, serious things. And this last book I wrote is Zip Code Injustice. It talks about the injustice that's done behind the wall. You know, cops being paid to give you that extra ticket. You know, being paid to do that extra lockup. That's my latest release. And I know that I'm going to get some flack back from somebody in reference to it, but you know what? It reveals, prayerfully it will heal, and prayerfully it will inspire.
Yes, ma'am.
I have no connections to anyone there. Didn't have one when I went in. I went in with a mission and I came out with a mission, and my purpose interlocked with your purpose.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
and
ma'am.
I've always been a rooter for you. You know, I've always been one of them ones hollering, somebody go see about Porter.
Yeah.
So you know, I've always been a rooter for you. And because I don't know, like I said, I just saw something. I just, you know, it was just something about you that I saw. And I'm not one to attach to many people. I don't attach to anybody. You know,
well, I remember that seriousness about you.
Yeah, I'm not attaching to you. I can't
Yes,
afford to attach until I know where your heart is. I know where you're going. I understand what you're doing, and I'm watching.
Yes, right.
I watched you for years and years, and then finally I said, well, you know what? They can't beat me up and take my pension, and they can't do nothing to me because I'm getting ready to call Dennis and see how he doing. Yeah. I'm getting ready to get in touch with him on a whole different level, and they can't take nothing from me because I see something that needs to be spoken about. And I'm so happy that we were able to talk to you and understand what you do. And again, Miss Clark, I'm gonna get you. Again, Miss Clark.
Come on, Miss Clark.
Yes, I'm gonna get you, Miss Clark. I'm gonna get you. Because of the simple fact that I'm a firm believer. You know, I used to go to the schools and do the coins thing, correctional officers in neighborhoods and schools. And we went with a lot of the people that you know, a lot of people that donated to you when you were leaving.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the things we used to tell the kids at the school is if you like getting Kool-Aid out of your refrigerator, don't go to jail.
Right? I
Mm,
Because
love
ain't
that.
no
I
better
love
way.
it.
You know,
mm,
if you like wearing your Timbs and you like wearing your bling, don't lose it.
mm,
Because we
Yeah.
got your
yep.
new bling, we got your new Timbs, and ain't no refrigerator with Kool-Aid. You
Right.
know,
Yes.
so like
Yep.
I said, I started out trying to stop the kids from going to prison.
Mhm.
And I am so happy that you are running a program that will redirect people and show people that there is a positive to the negative.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes,
You know, I'm
ma'am.
so glad of that. I am so glad of that. I
Yes.
can't even say it 1,000 times over. I am so
Mhm.
glad of it.
Yes.
But we're going.
I'm going to conclude with something that Uncle Yaya says is a simple statement, but it really helped me all those years. He very simply said, "A quitter never wins, and a winner never
Never quit.
quits."
Exactly.
Amen. That's
You
right.
know.
Exactly. And
That
that's
is
something to
right.
stand on. That's something to stand on.
Mhm.
And you know, for our listeners, and I, like I said, I don't know how long they put it on tape, but we're going to try to make sure that we get the majority of it on my YouTube channel, on my channel. I'll give you guys the link so that you can share it. Please share this
Man.
information, audience. Share this
Yes.
information, because this is something that's essential to the lifeline of our generations. This is
Mhm.
Mm,
essential to what we need when we talk about the homeless that are out there, and we don't want to see the homeless. We talk
yep.
about the uneducated, and we don't want to see the uneducated. We don't want to see our men and women go through years and years of what they considered reformation, and then just drop it and go back to what they know in the old, from their old living.
That's
Because
right.
when they,
Yes, ma'am.
whatever age you get, I used to tell people, whatever age you get locked up at, your
Mhm.
mind locks at that. And if
Yes.
you don't
Mm-hmm.
do something with your mind from that point on, you lose. You
Mhm.
Yes,
lose.
ma'am.
And we don't
It's
and we
true.
don't want to continuously lose anybody. So with that, Felice, you have any last words for our guests? And I'm gonna let
Yes.
Mr. Porter know who's here with us
Mhm.
behind the stage. But do you
Mhm.
have any last words you want to
Yes. I
add?
do. I do. In this, as humbly as I can say this, as Nanette did say this earlier, that I'm so proud of you. Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
just in, just know that I'm humbled to be in the presence of someone that God has anointed in such a way, because we are all meant to. Oh, please forgive me because I'm really about to cry. But we are supposed to be generational wealth builders.
Yes.
And sir, you're you are doing a generational wealth building that as Moses and Abraham walked with God and didn't even know, he told Abraham, "You will be the father of many nations,
Mm,
and that you will have many descendants, more than the grains of sand on a beach."
mm, mm-hmm.
And I feel that with you, that again, this is such a mighty work that has such a profound effect for our society. So thank you. Thank you for your life. Thank you for the obedience that you have to God. And I take I take great pleasure and know that it is a blessing. And I've been studying these last 2 weeks of being blessed and favored by God.
Yes.
And I feel blessed and favored for him to get to meet you and know you and understand how he has purposed your life. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much.
You're more than welcome. And thank you, Nanette, for also being the awesome person that you are to,
Oh,
whew, just to
you are
know. So
more
you
than
shut up
welcome.
now. Please go
Yeah,
on because
I'm
I'm about to
more
be
than
through.
welcome. More than welcome all the time.
Mhm.
Even though you are my partner in crime.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just hold the shovel. I keep telling her, Mr. Porter, I just hold the shovel.
So I want to let you know that you have Mr. Keith Hill, who's in the background here. We're going to add him to the stage. Mr. Keith Hill, he's here. He's been watching and joining us. We have, of course, Miss Sherry Porter, who's been
That's my
here.
wife.
Well, then I salute you, ma'am. I salute you, salute you, salute you. We have her. She has been here, and then we have the phenomenal Ms. Mahita Clark.
Oh yeah.
We have her here. Uh Miss Clark and Miss Porter, if you like, you can unmute yourself and say hello to Dennis. I know you speak to him all the time, but you can do that if you like. But I wanted you to know that there is an audience that needs to hear this. And for the audience that's here, the audience that's looking at the replay of this, we do a magazine, and my first intention was to just have Dennis on the magazine. That was my very first intention. I was like, well, I need you to be a part of my magazine. And I don't know why, but even when we were together inside the walls, he would always say, yes, Miss Buchanan. Yes, Miss Buchanan, and that would be it. So he did agree to be on in the magazine, which will be, he's in the January issue. He will be the cover of my January issue. However, I then came back and said to him, hey, I need you to be on my show. And he said, whatever you need, you can have whatever you need. So I said that, Dennis, so that Miss Wahida Clark could hear that, so that when I say to her that I want her to be in the magazine and I want her to be on the show, she would just simply say, yes, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. So I want to thank you. We are now at an hour and a half. Our show is usually an hour, but what I felt we needed this time. So I want to thank you, sir, so much. I really do. I want to thank you. And we will be in touch because, of course, I got to get the article together and any upcoming things that you're doing. We want to make sure that we have all the updates and everything. So we'll be in touch like we always are. And I want to thank the audience for being the audience that you are. And don't forget to go to Mr. Porter. I'm going to put up your email address. If anyone wants to get in touch with him, this is his email address. You can contact him at this email address. Please do. Please do. If you need this in your community, you need a program like this to be a part of what we have and what we do, please, 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 by all means, go to it. Go to his email address, pick up what's needed, any part of the program that's needed, anything that you think your community needs. Please go to his email address and give him a shout out and let his staff and his team love on you like he's been loving on the communities that he's extended the program to, because we need this. We really do. Again, replays of this will be on my website, www.NanetteMBuchanan.com, and on my YouTube channel, iPen Designs. So you can go there and get the link. I will be sending you the link, Mr. Porter, so that you can post it and you will have it for your organization if they want to look at it and they want to see it. And we want to love on you. We want to extend our love to you and thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all too. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Everybody have a good evening. This is the end of the stream. Have a good evening.
Goodbye.